When I speak of the possibility that you have lived more than one life, I am not merely invoking the romantic notion of reincarnation, nor the comfort some find in believing the soul returns in cycles. I am speaking of an echo that moves through your very bones, a resonance not born from your present biography, but from something older, strenger, and far less linear than the human calendar. In my work, I have come to understand that the psyche is not bound by time as we know it. The unconscious has no clock, no strict chronology. It carries layers of memory, symbol, and instinct that can feel as though they belong to lifetimes you cannot consciously recall. The dream is the most faithful courier of this truth. It slips past the rational defenses you have built to tell you stories in which you are someone else, wearing a face you have never seen in the mirror, speaking a language your waking mind has never learned, and yet, in that dream, you know it, not like a student learning for the first time, but like a traveler returning to a childhood home. These experiences are not coincidence. They are the psyche's way of revealing that the self you call I is merely a chapter, not the whole book. If you listen carefully, you will find the past lives, or what I might more precisely call psychic inheritances, seeping through in your fears, your inexplicable affinities, your aversion, and the archetypes that animate your fantasies. You may find yourself drawn irresistibly to a certain period in history, to a culture, an art form, or a landscape you have never visited in this incarnation. You may carry a sorrow that seems too deep for the wounds you have sustained here, or a wisdom you cannot remember learning. These are not accidents, they are the fingerprints of the unconscious pressing against the thin membrane of the present. One of the most haunting elements of such a psychic inheritance is the feeling of déjà vu that is not tied to a single scene, but to an entire pattern of life. You meet someone and feel the pull of recognition so strong it bypasses reason. You know them not in the polite, surface way that words can explain, but in the marrow, and with that knowing often comes a curious blend of joy and grief, as if greeting a friend at the end of a long exile, while also remembering every goodbye you've ever said to them across centuries. In the depths of analysis, I have seen these encounters crack open the patient's orderly sense of self, forcing them to confront a truth that cannot be measured in years. The archetypes, too, are carriers of such timeless identity. When you embody the archetype of the wanderer, the healer, the warrior, or the magician, you are not merely playing a role invented by your current circumstances. You are slipping into a pattern that has existed across countless lives, both lived and imagined, both personal and collective. The archetype is older than you. It is a root that snakes down through the soil of many lifetimes. And each time you step into it, you add another ring to its tree. To realize this is to feel both smaller and infinitely larger, a single leaf on a vast, ancient organism. But beware, to awaken to such knowledge is not without peril. The ego resists it, because the ego thrives on the illusion of singularity. It wants to believe you began at birth and will end at death. It wants to believe that what you own, what you achieve, and how you are remembered in this one span of time is all that matters. But when the deeper self begins to whisper, when the dreams grow more vivid, the symbols more insistent, the encounters more fated, the ego begins to crack, and in that crack, the light seeps in. But so does the shadow. You may begin to recall not only the beauty of other lives, but the betrayals, the mistakes, the cruelties you inflicted and endured. These too belong to you, for the psyche is mercilessly whole. There is a reason I call this my darkest insight. To live more than one life means you have more than one death. You have carried not only wisdom, but also grief through the corridors of existence. It explains why certain situations fill you with unreasoning terror, why certain faces make your heart ache without cause, why the scent of a certain flower can move you to tears. These are the fragments of your other lives, scattered like shards across the path of your current journey. And if you wish to walk that path with awareness, you must bend down and pick them up one by one until you see the pattern they form. The work of analysis in such cases becomes a form of archaeological excavation. The present personality is the topsoil, thin and fragile. Beneath it lie the sedimentary layers of your psychic history, each lifetime, a stratum containing its own artifacts, traumas, and triumphs. We dig not with shovels, but with symbols, dreams, slips of the tongue, and the sudden surges of emotion that seem to come from nowhere. Each find changes the map of who you are, and if you dig long enough, you may find that the very bedrock of your being is not personal at all, but collective, the ancient ground of humanity itself, where all lives converge. Yet this realization, while vast, is not meant to dissolve you into some vague universal soup. On the contrary, it is an invitation to live this life more fully, knowing it is one verse in a far longer song. The notes you sing now will echo into the next verse and the next. That is why your choices matter. That is why the shadow you avoid today may become the wound you inherit tomorrow. And that is why love not the sentimental kind, but the fierce, sacrificial love that recognizes the soul in another is the only currency that passes intact from one life to the next. Even as I say this, I can feel some of you resisting. Your rational mind insists there is no proof, and indeed, in the laboratory of science, as it is narrowly defined, there may never be. But in the laboratory of the psyche, in the dim-lit corridors where dreams, synchronicities, and ancient symbols weave their tapestry, the proof is everywhere. It is in the dream that repeats across decades, in the child who speaks of places they have never seen, in the uncanny sense of returning to a city you have never visited and navigating it with ease. It is in the shiver that runs through you when you hold an object old and worn. and feel it thrum like a tuning fork against your heart. You do not need to believe blindly. You only need to pay attention. The unconscious is constantly leaving you clues, testing your readiness to remember. The more you notice, the more it will reveal, and perhaps one day, when the veil thins, as it does in moments of deep love, great loss, or the brink of sleep, you will catch a glimpse of yourself in another skin, another time, another story, and in that instant you will know this life is precious. Yes, but it is not all. When we enter the territory of dreams, with the question of other lives in our hearts, the terrain becomes even more treacherous and luminous. Dreams are not bound by the linearity of your waking story. They are stitched together from fragments of the personal and the collective unconscious, from memories that are yours and memories that seem to belong to no one and everyone. At once, in them, time folds in on itself like a serpent, swallowing its tail, and you may find yourself inhabiting a body that is not your own, walking streets you have never seen in daylight, speaking with the voice of someone who has been dead for centuries. The waking mind will try to dismiss this as fantasy, as the random firing of neurons, but you must learn to see it differently, as the psyche's attempt to show you the wholeness of your being, a wholeness that extends beyond the current frame. You might dream of being a soldier in an army whose banners you have never studied, yet you feel the weight of the armor, the fear of battle, the taste of dust and iron. Or you might stand in a temple whose architecture you cannot name, but the incense fills your lungs with a nostalgia so deep it aches. These are not always literal memories of past lives. To take them as such too quickly would be to trap them in the net of the ego's vanity. Rather, they are psychic truths, echoes of experiences lodged in the deeper strata of your soul, where individual and collective histories merge. The unconscious speaks in symbols, and in these symbols are condensed entire lifetimes of meaning. I have observed in my patients and in myself that such dream experiences often emerge at critical thresholds in life, when the old identity no longer suffices and the new one has not yet taken form. It is as if the psyche calls upon its hidden archive of lives to lend you the strength, wisdom, or caution needed for the passage. The dream is not merely for curiosity's sake. It is a summons. You are being asked to integrate something you once knew, perhaps long ago, into the fabric of who you are now. In this way, past lives are not a romantic detour. They are instruments of individuation, tools by which the self, the central archetype of wholeness, shapes you into who you must become. But you must tread carefully. The danger lies in becoming lost in these visions, seduced by the glamour of being someone other, somewhere else. The ego can appropriate past life imagery as a form of inflation, convincing you that you are special, chosen, superior. This is not awakening, it is intoxication. The true path is humbler and far more demanding. If the psyche shows you a life in which you held power, It is not to make you boast, but to ask whether you misused that power and whether you are repeating that pattern now. If you see yourself in a life of poverty or suffering, it is not to curse you, but to remind you of the resilience and compassion you forged there, which you may need again. The shadow, too, follows across lifetimes. This is one of the most difficult truths to accept. What you refuse to face in one life does not vanish. It waits, patient and silent, until it can return in another form. A man who runs from his cowardice may find himself born in circumstances that demand courage. A woman who manipulates others through beauty may awaken in a life where beauty is denied her, forcing her to find a deeper source of worth. The shadow will pursue you until you turn toward it and embrace it as part of yourself. This is why the signs of having lived more than one life are not always pleasant. Sometimes they are wounds that reopen with uncanny familiarity, teaching you that healing is the work of many lifetimes. And then there are the synchronicities, those moments when inner and outer reality align in ways that defy explanation. You are reading about a remote village, and a stranger on the train begins telling you they grew up there. You dream of an ancient symbol, and the next day you find it carved into a stone in a museum you visit by chance. These are not coincidences in the ordinary sense. They are the self's way of reminding you that your journey is guided by an intelligence that spans beyond this life. Synchronicity is the language of the soul across time, stitching your different incarnations together with golden thread. It is in the quiet moments that the truth presses closest. You are sitting alone, and a sudden wave of homesickness washes over you, not for any place you have known here, but for somewhere else. A place you could not find on any map. Or you hear a piece of music for the first time, and tears spring to your eyes before a single memory can explain them. This is the pull of the soul's memory. It does not shout, it murmurs, and you must learn to lean in to hear it. To live with the awareness of multiple lives is to carry a strange double vision. You must honor the present incarnation with all the devotion you can muster, for it is the ground you stand on. But you must also be willing to let the whisper of other lives inform your choices, broaden your compassion, and remind you that what you do now reverberates beyond the horizon of this single lifetime. This knowledge can either crush you under the weight of eternity or liberate you into a deeper sense of meaning. Which it will be depends on whether you meet it with fear or with love. You may ask, how then does one integrate this awareness without becoming lost in it? The answer lies in the same principle that governs all true psychological work. Hold the tension of the opposites. Do not cling so tightly to the past that you neglect the present, and do not cling so tightly to the present that you deny the past. Let them inform each other in a living dialogue. As two mirrors reflecting the same flame from different angles, in that dialogue, something new emerges. Not the past self, not the current self, but the self in its timeless form. And here, perhaps, is the most important thing I can tell you. Whether or not you believe you have lived before, the signs of those other lives are alive in you. They shape your dreams, your loves, your fears, your choices. You are the sum of countless journeys, and yet you are more than their sum. To see this is to step out of the narrow corridor of birth and death and into the vast cathedral of existence, where every life is but one window, and the light that pours through them is eternal. Close your eyes for a moment, not to escape the world, but to step into it more fully. The ordinary light of this room will fade, and another kind of light will rise, a dim amber glow, as if coming from within the marrow of your bones. In this light, the mind relaxes its grip on the narrow definitions of who you are. You are not merely the body seated here. You are a vessel containing centuries of breath, laughter, grief, and longing. The air you inhale is heavy with the incense of temples long crumbled into dust, yet somehow still standing in the corridors of your inner world. You hear footsteps on stone that your current body has never walked, yet they feel like your own. Let the first image come without forcing it. Perhaps it is a hand weathered, calloused, reaching for something. Perhaps it is a doorway framed in carved wood. Perhaps it is a voice calling your name, not the name you wear today, but one you recognize in the deepest hollows of your chest. That recognition is the signal. It is not imagination in the trivial sense. It is the psyche turning the page of a much older chapter and allowing you to read a few lines before closing it again. When I guide people into these realms, I tell them not to chase the images. The past will not yield itself to grasping hands. It must be courted, respected. A scent may draw you in smoke from a fire that burns peat instead of wood, the sharp tang of metal being forged. Your skin might remember the feel of fabric woven in a pattern your present culture does not make. These are not random, they are threads, and if you are patient, they will weave themselves into a tapestry that shows you not only who you were, but why those echoes have found you again now. Sometimes what you meet is not beautiful. You may recall the weight of chains on your wrists, the humiliation of defeat, the searing pain of a betrayal that shaped the way you trust even today. Here is where courage is required. For to live more than one life means you have endured more than one death. And each death leaves a scar in the soul's memory. Those scars may still ache in this life, making you flinch from situations that feel too familiar, even if you cannot name why. The task is not to run from them, but to stand before them, to feel the full weight of what they carry, and to recognize that surviving them is part of why you are here now. There are moments when these memories come unbidden, not in meditation or dream, but in the raw pulse of daily life. You are speaking to someone, and suddenly their eyes flash with a look you have seen before, not in this lifetime, but in another where they were your closest ally or your bitterest enemy. Your body reacts before your mind can explain. The heart quickens, the breath shifts, and you feel the gravity of an old bond reasserting itself. These are the turning points, for in them you are given a choice to repeat the old pattern or to alter it. And this, I tell you, may be the very reason your soul agreed to return, not to reenact the same dance endlessly, but to change the steps. The archetypes are the bridge across these lifetimes. When you feel the stirrings of the warrior, the sage, the lover, or the orphan within you, understand that you are touching energies that have moved through countless human forms, including your own in various guises. The lover in this life may have been the warrior in another. The sage who seeks wisdom now may once have been the fool who squandered it. The archetype is not fixed. It evolves through you and you through it. Recognizing this is to see your life as part of an unfolding myth far greater than any single incarnation. Synchronicity, too, will deepen as your awareness grows. You will begin to notice how the outer world conspires with the inner to awaken your memory. A stranger will speak a phrase that uncannily matches the words you heard in a dream the night before. You will turn a corner and see a symbol, etched in stone, a spiral, a cross, a serpent that has been haunting your thoughts for weeks. These are not accidents. They are the footprints of the self guiding you toward integration. And yet, I must caution you, to remember is not to retreat. The past, however luminous or shadowed, is not a place to live. Its role is to inform the present, to offer you the wisdom and the warnings you need to walk your current path with greater clarity. If you spend your days longing to return to another life, you abandon the only soil in which your soul can plant seeds. Now, your task is to gather the fragments of all your lives and bring them to bear here. In the choices you make, the people you love, the truths you speak. As you do this, something remarkable happens. The fear of death begins to loosen its grip. You begin to sense that what you are cannot be extinguished by the closing of your eyes in this world. You have closed them before and opened them again elsewhere. And just as the memory of birth fades, so too will the memory of this death fade when you step into the next chapter. What remains, the only thing that endures across the long journey of the soul, is the growth of consciousness, the integration of the shadow, the expansion of love. If you can live with that awareness, not as dogma, not as a story to impress others, but as a quiet truth carried in the marrow, you will find that life, all lives, become more precious. Every sunrise will feel like an ancient gift. Every encounter will shimmer with the possibility that it is a continuation of a bond forged long ago. And every act of kindness will feel as if you are repaying a debt from a time you cannot name. This is the mystery, this is the gift, and this is the weight you carry, not as a burden, but as a sacred inheritance. When we speak of reconciling all your lifetimes, it is tempting to imagine a grand reunion, a council of selves seated around some inner table, each dressed in the garments of their own era, offering their stories, their warnings, their gifts. And in some sense, this is not far from the truth, but the work is not so literal, nor so easily staged. The reconciliation I speak of happens in the quietest corners of your being, in the way you respond to a stranger, in the way you choose between fear and trust, in the way you forgive yourself for mistakes whose origins are older than this body. It is a slow weaving, a patient integration. The unconscious does not separate your lifetimes into neat files. They overlap like images projected on the same screen. Sometimes the outlines blur and you cannot tell which feeling belongs to which life, and perhaps it does not matter. The important thing is to notice the patterns. Do you see how certain themes keep returning to you, dressed in different costumes? Perhaps the fear of abandonment appears again and again, though the faces that trigger it change. Perhaps the hunger for freedom burns in you no matter the circumstances of your birth. These are the strands the self will not allow you to ignore, for they are the deep currents shaping your soul's long voyage. In analysis, when a patient touches one of these deep currents, there is often a moment of silence, a silence charged with recognition. It is as if we have stepped into a chamber where the air is thick with centuries. In such moments, the person sitting before me is no longer only the child of their parents. They are a soul that has worn and shed many names. Their tears are not only for the wounds of this life, but for the ancient ache of being human across the ages. It is a humbling thing to witness, for it reveals how much larger each person's story is than they believe. The archetype of the self, that radiant, unifying center, is the architect of this reconciliation. It is the one who remembers all the lives when you cannot, who holds the whole tapestry in view, while you see only a few threads. In dreams, it may appear as a wise figure, a guide, or even as a landscape that feels like home in a way no earthly place ever has. In waking life, it moves through synchronicity, through the subtle orchestration of events that bring you face to face with the very lessons you have avoided for lifetimes. To align with it is to agree to the work of wholeness, even when that work requires you to revisit pain. I must tell you, there is a shadow side to this reconciliation. When you open the door to all that you have been, you will also meet the parts of yourself you would rather forget: the selfishness, the cruelty, the betrayals. These too are yours. The temptation is to dissociate from them, to say, that was another life, not me. But if you do this, you fragment again. To reconcile is to look these shadows in the eye and acknowledge them as part of the whole. This does not mean you condone them. It means you take responsibility for the energy they represent, and you choose to transform it in the present. Transformation is the true purpose of remembering, not nostalgia, not fascination, but the transmutation of old patterns into new possibilities. If in another life you closed your heart in bitterness, in this life you may choose to keep it open in the face of loss. If in another life you used your power to dominate, in this life you may choose to use it to protect. In this way, each incarnation becomes a workshop for the soul, a place where the unfinished work of one life can be continued in another. And so I say to you, do not seek past lives as one seeks treasures to display, but as one seeks lost tools needed for the task at hand. If a memory comes, ask it, what are you here to teach me now? If a dream presents you with a scene from another age, do not only marvel at it, look for the thread that leads back to your present challenges. This is how the past becomes fuel for your becoming, rather than a trap that keeps you circling the same ground. There is a moment, if you stay with this work long enough, when the boundaries between your lives begin to dissolve. You no longer think in terms of that life and this life. You feel the continuity. The single river flowing through many landscapes. You see that you are not merely the sum of your incarnations, but the river itself, and that the source from which it flows is beyond birth and death altogether. In that realization, something within you relaxes. You understand that while each life matters profoundly, none is final. Each is a verse in a song without end. When this realization comes, the way you live changes. You no longer hurry as if the hourglass is running out, nor do you squander time as if it were infinite. You begin to live with precision, with intention, knowing that the seeds you plant now will grow in fields you may one day walk again. You speak more carefully, for words echo. You love more deeply, for bons endure, and you face the shadow more willingly, for you know it will follow you until it is embraced. Perhaps this is the truest sign that you have lived more than one life, not the dreams, not the déjà vu, not the inexplicable affinities, but the quiet knowledge that what you do here matters beyond your own years. You feel the weight of it, yes, but also the freedom. For if you have walked through death before and found yourself still alive in some new dawn, then even the darkest night of this life cannot terrify you as it once did. You have been here before. You will be here again. And somewhere, deep within, you have always been. And so, as we stand here together at the edge of this conversation, I invite you to feel the weight of the silence between my words. In that silence, you may sense the echo of footsteps, your own, taken long before this life began. You may feel the tremor of hands you once clasped, the warmth of fires you once sat beside, the voices of people whose names are lost, but whose presence still breathes through you. This is not imagination in the shallow sense. This is the undercurrent of your being, the great river of memory flowing beneath the surface of your present awareness. If you allow yourself to lean into it, you will feel that you are not moving forward in a straight line, but rather spiraling, revisiting familiar ground from a higher vantage, each turn of the spiral bringing you closer to the center of what you have always been seeking. You may think you are beginning anew, but you are also continuing something ancient. You may believe you are meeting someone for the first time, but you are also recognizing them across the vast corridors of time. There is a deep responsibility in this. Once you know that your soul carries the weight of many lives, you can no longer pretend that your actions end with you. What you heal here will ripple outward, forward, and back, touching the lives you have yet to live and the ones you have already walked through. What you refuse to face will return, wearing a new mask, until you have the courage to unmask it. And what you love, truly love, will follow you across the centuries, no matter the form it takes. This is why I tell you, live with precision, live with reverence. Do not waste the days given to you in this body, for they are the rare moments when eternity bends close enough for you to touch it. Do not squander your words, for they plant seeds in the soil of the future. And above all, do not turn away from the shadow, for it holds the key to the freedom you have sought across lifetimes. In the stillness of the night, when you feel the veil grow thin, you may sense them, the other selves, the other lives. They do not clamor for your attention. They simply stand with you like quiet witnesses. And if you listen closely, you will hear not a chorus of different voices, but one voice, layered and deep, speaking from the heart of the self. It will not speak of past or future. It will speak only of now, for in truth, all your lives exist here, in this moment, in this breath. So take this breath fully, feel it move through you as it has moved through countless versions of you. Let it carry with it the griefs you have yet to lay down, the loves you have yet to honor, the truths you have yet to speak. And as you release it, feel the great turning of the wheel, the endless rhythm of return. You have been here before. You will be here again. And in the spaces between, you will be everywhere. This is not the end of the journey, nor the beginning. It is a continuation, the next step on a path you have walked for longer than you can remember, guided by a light that has never left you. And when you leave here tonight, may you walk with a quiet certainty that every moment is an intersection of all that you have been and all you have yet to be. Ergo, then, live as if you have been entrusted with the wisdom of centuries, because you have. Love as if you have met every soul before, because you have. And meet each day as if it were the only day you will ever have, because in this life it is. And when the time comes to close your eyes once more, may you do so with the same calm with which you close them now, knowing that you are not stepping into the dark, but into the next remembering